I tried to win back, the one that got away. But when I found her again, she was engaged, to my cousin, and pregnant. For 3 years, I'd been carrying the weight of the biggest mistake of my life. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Sophie Martinez standing on my doorstep in Austin, tears streaming down her face as she asked me to choose between her and my career. And every time, I remembered the look of devastation when I told her I needed to take the job in Seattle, that we could try long distance, that this opportunity was too important to pass up. "This is it for us, isn't it?" she'd whispered, her voice breaking. "You're choosing a job over what we have." I should have said no. I should have told her that nothing was more important than us, that I'd find another opportunity, that some things were worth more than career advancement. Instead, I stood there like an idiot and said the words that would haunt me for years. "Sophie, you have to understand. This is my future we're talking about." "I thought I was your future," she replied, and then she walked out of my life. That was 2021. Now, in the fall of 2024, I was finally in a position to make things right. The tech startup I joined in Seattle had been acquired by a major corporation, and my stock options had vested. I was financially secure, emotionally ready, and determined to find Sophie and prove to her that I'd learned from my mistakes. I'd spent months tracking her down through mutual friends and social media searches. Sophie had always been private online, but I'd finally gotten a lead from our college friend Maria, who mentioned that Sophie was living in Denver and working as a graphic designer for a sustainable fashion company. Denver was perfect. I could transfer to our company's Colorado office, get a fresh start in a city where Sophie and I could rebuild what we'd lost. I'd spent weeks crafting the perfect plan: find her, apologize for my stupidity, show her how much I'd grown and changed, and hopefully convince her to give us another chance. I'd rehearsed what I would say 1,000 times. How I'd explain that the success I'd achieved meant nothing without her to share it with. How I'd realized that love was more important than ambition, that partnership was more valuable than any career milestone. How I'd spent 3 years regretting the choice I'd made and hoping for the chance to make it right. The coffee shop on Larimer Street was supposed to be our reunion venue. I'd done my research, found out it was near her office, the kind of place she'd always loved: exposed brick walls, local art, the smell of fresh roasted beans. I arrived 30 minutes early, claiming a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. When Sophie walked through the door, my breath caught in my throat. She looked exactly the same but somehow more beautiful, her dark hair longer than I remembered, her smile as radiant as ever as she scanned the room looking for whoever she was meeting. She wore a flowing green dress that complemented her olive skin, and for a moment, I was 25 again, falling in love with her all over again. But then I noticed the ring on her finger, a simple but elegant diamond that caught the afternoon light as she raised her hand to wave at someone behind me. And then I saw the subtle curve of her abdomen, the way her dress draped over what was unmistakably a pregnant belly. My heart stopped. Sophie was engaged. Sophie was pregnant. Sophie had moved on completely while I'd been living in the past, planning a future that no longer existed. I turned to see who she was waving at and felt the world tilt sideways. Walking toward her with a huge grin on his face was my cousin Jake, carrying 2 coffee cups and looking happier than I'd ever seen him. He kissed Sophie gently, his hand automatically moving to rest on her stomach in a gesture so intimate and protective that I felt physically sick. "Sorry I'm late, babe," I heard him say as they settled at a table just 2 away from mine. The line was insane. "It's okay," Sophie replied, her voice carrying the same warmth I remembered but now directed at someone else. "Baby Martinez has been craving their vanilla latte all morning." Baby Martinez. She was taking Jake's name. She was having Jake's baby. The woman I'd spent 3 years dreaming about had fallen in love with my cousin and was building the life with him that I'd thrown away. I sat frozen in my chair, watching them through my peripheral vision, trying to process the cosmic cruelty of the situation. Of all the people in the world Sophie could have ended up with, it had to be Jake. My cousin who I'd grown up with, who knew all my stories, who I'd probably mentioned Sophie to dozens of times during family gatherings. "I can't believe we're already at 20 weeks, Sophie was saying, her hand joining Jake's on her stomach. "It feels like just yesterday we were staring at that positive pregnancy test in complete shock." "Best shock of my life," Jake replied, and the genuine love in his voice was unmistakable. "I still can't believe I get to marry you and raise this little person with you." They started talking about baby names, nursery colors, whether they wanted to find out the gender. Normal, happy couple conversations about their future together, the future I'd once imagined having with Sophie but had been too stupid and selfish to fight for. I should have left. I should have stood up, walked out of that coffee shop, and started processing the reality that my grand romantic gesture was 3 years too late. Instead, I sat there torturing myself, listening to the woman I loved plan a life with my cousin, watching them share the kind of easy intimacy that comes from genuine partnership. Jake, Sophie said at one point, her voice taking on a more serious tone, do you ever wonder about the timing of all this? How we might never have met if circumstances had been different. What do you mean? I mean, if I hadn't been so heartbroken after Austin, I never would have moved to Denver. If I hadn't taken that job at the design firm, I never would have been working on your company's rebranding project. If I hadn't been ready to swear off relationships entirely, I might not have given you a chance when you asked me out. Jake laughed. So you're saying I should thank whoever broke your heart for making you available? Something like that, Sophie smiled. Though I'd rather thank the universe for bringing us together when we were both ready for something real. The irony was suffocating. My decision to leave Sophie had set in motion the chain of events that led her to Jake. My choice to prioritize my career over our relationship had inadvertently delivered the love of my life to my cousin. I'd lost her and given her to him in the same selfish moment. Speaking of timing, Jake said, pulling out his phone, my mom called earlier asking about Christmas plans. She wants to make sure we'll be there for the big family gathering since it'll be our last one as just the two of us. Of course we'll be there, Sophie replied. I love your family. They've been so welcoming, especially after I told them about my parents' situation. They love you too. My mom keeps saying you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and she's not wrong. Christmas, the annual Martinez family gathering that I'd been planning to skip again this year, just like I had for the past 3 years because being around family reminded me too much of Sophie and the stories I used to tell about her. Now I'd have to either miss another Christmas or watch my cousin introduce his pregnant fiancée to the family, knowing that fiancée was the woman I'd never stopped loving. Have you told them the news about the promotion? Sophie asked. Not yet. I wanted to tell everyone together at Christmas. Regional manager at 28, not bad for a college dropout who started in the warehouse. I remember Jake's struggles after high school, how he'd bounced between jobs while I was getting my engineering degree. He'd always felt like the family underachiever compared to me and our other cousin who'd gone to law school. Apparently, he'd found his path eventually, and it had led him to Sophie. I'm so proud of you, Sophie said, reaching across the table to take his hand. You've worked so hard for this, and you deserve everything good that's happening to us. We deserve it, Jake corrected gently. None of this would mean anything without you and little Martinez here. They talked for another hour about work, the pregnancy, their upcoming move to a bigger apartment, wedding plans for the spring. All the practical, mundane details of two people building a life together, making decisions as a team, choosing each other every day in small and large ways. Everything I'd been too immature and self-centered to do when I'd had the chance. As they prepared to leave, Sophie struggled slightly getting up from her chair, and Jake was immediately there, helping her stand, asking if she was okay, making sure she had everything she needed. The care and attention he showed her was automatic, natural, the kind of partnership that develops between people who truly prioritize each other. Thank you, Sophie said, kissing him softly. For everything. For being exactly what I needed when I needed it most. Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to dinner that first time, even though you insisted it wasn't a date. It wasn't supposed to be a date, Sophie laughed. You wore me down with your persistence and your terrible dad jokes. Hey, my dad jokes are excellent. That's why you fell in love with me. I fell in love with you because you made me believe in love again, Sophie said, her voice soft but clear enough for me to hear every word. Because you showed me what it looks like when someone chooses you every single day, not just when it's convenient or easy. They left the coffee shop hand in hand, Jake protectively guiding Sophie through the door, his other hand resting on her lower back. I watched through the window as they walked down the street, talking animatedly about something, stopping occasionally for Jake to point out things in shop windows that he thought she might like. They looked happy, not just content or satisfied, but genuinely, radiantly happy in a way that made it obvious they were exactly where they belonged. I sat in that coffee shop for another 2 hours, staring at my untouched coffee and trying to process what I'd witnessed. Sophie hadn't just moved on from our relationship, she'd found something better. She'd found someone who put her first, who supported her dreams, who was excited about building a future with her instead of seeing her as an obstacle to his ambitions. Jake had given her everything I'd been too selfish to give her 3 years ago. Commitment, partnership, the security of knowing she was truly loved and chosen. And now they were having a baby together, getting married, creating the family that Sophie had always wanted. The family I could have had with her if I'd been brave enough to choose love over career advancement. That night, I called my mom from my hotel room, ostensibly to confirm my Christmas plans but really because I needed to hear a familiar voice while I processed the wreckage of my romantic delusions. "Of course you should come for Christmas, Michael," she said, her voice warm with the kind of maternal affection that usually comforted me. "It's been 3 years since you've been home for the holidays. The family misses you. Has Jake mentioned that he's bringing someone?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, you mean Sophie?" "Yes, he's been talking about her non-stop for months. We're all excited to meet her finally. Jake seems absolutely smitten." "What has he told you about her?" "Just that she's a graphic designer, very creative and intelligent. He says she's the kindest person he's ever met, and that she makes him want to be a better man." "Why do you ask?" I closed my eyes, remembering how I used to describe Sophie to my family in almost identical terms back when we were together. The kindness, the creativity, the way she inspired me to be better, all the qualities that had made me fall in love with her were now making Jake fall in love with her. "Just curious," I said. "It sounds serious, very serious. He asked your uncle for his grandmother's engagement ring last month. We're expecting an announcement any day now." The engagement ring. Jake had proposed with a family heirloom, giving Sophie the kind of romantic gesture that honored both their relationship and his family history. Another thing I'd never thought to do when we were together, another way Jake was succeeding where I'd failed. "Michael, are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired from work." "You work too hard, sweetheart. Maybe it's time to think about settling down yourself. Find a nice girl, start a family. You're 31 now. You don't want to wait too long." If only she knew that I'd already found the nice girl, lost her through my own stupidity, and spent the last 3 years convinced I could somehow win her back. If only she knew that the woman Jake was bringing to Christmas was the same woman I'd told her about years ago, the one she'd always hoped I'd marry. "Maybe," I said. "We'll see what happens." After I hung up, I spent the rest of the evening walking around downtown Denver, trying to figure out what to do next. My original plan had been to approach Sophie directly, to surprise her with a heartfelt apology and a proposal to start over. Now I was faced with the reality that she was not only unavailable but unavailable to my own cousin. Going to Christmas would mean watching Jake and Sophie together, seeing them happy and in love, pretending to meet her for the first time while knowing she was carrying my cousin's baby. It would mean celebrating their relationship while mourning what I'd lost, smiling and offering congratulations while my heart broke all over again. But not going would mean another Christmas away from family, another year of avoiding the people I loved because I couldn't face my own mistakes. It would mean missing the chance to see Sophie one more time, even if it was as Jake's fiancée rather than as the woman I'd hoped to win back. 2 days later, I made a decision that would test every bit of emotional maturity I'd supposedly developed over the past 3 years. I called Jake directly. "Michael, dude, how are you? It's been forever since we talked." Hearing his voice, warm and genuinely happy to hear from me, made this infinitely harder. Jake had always been one of my favorite cousins, the one I'd been closest to growing up. He'd looked up to me when we were kids, followed me around at family gatherings, asked for advice about girls and jobs and life in general. Now he was the one with his life figured out while I was calling to subtly interrogate him about the woman I'd never stopped loving. "I'm good, Jake, really good. Mom mentioned you're bringing someone special to Christmas?" "Sophie, yeah, she's incredible, Michael. I can't wait for you to meet her. I think you guys would really get along. She's smart and funny and just amazing." "How did you meet her?" "Work project about 1.5 years ago. My company hired her design firm to rebrand our image, and she was the lead designer assigned to our account. I probably fell in love with her in the first meeting, but she made me work for it." "She wasn't interested initially?" "She was coming out of a bad relationship," Jake said, and I winced at the description of our 3-year relationship as simply bad. Some guy who chose his career over her, from what I gathered. She was pretty closed off to dating anyone, especially someone she met through work. "But you convinced her?" I was persistent. Took about 6 months of casual coffee meetings and totally professional dinners before she agreed to an actual date. Even then, she was hesitant about getting involved with someone. What changed her mind? Jake was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a sincerity that made my chest ache. "I think she realized that I wasn't going anywhere. That I was willing to wait for her to be ready, that I wasn't going to pressure her or disappear when things got complicated. She'd been hurt pretty badly before, and I wanted to show her that not all guys are selfish assholes who bail when things get real. The indirect criticism stung because it was accurate. I had been a selfish asshole who bailed when things got real. I'd chosen personal advancement over partnership, individual success over shared commitment. Jake had apparently learned from my mistakes without even knowing he was correcting them. And now you're engaged? Not officially yet, but soon. I'm planning to propose on Christmas Eve, actually, in front of the whole family. Sophie loves big romantic gestures, and I want everyone to be there when I ask her to marry me. That sounds perfect, I managed, though the words felt like glass in my throat. Michael, I have to tell you, Sophie is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I never understood what people meant when they talked about finding the one until I met her. She makes everything in my life better just by being in it. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the competing emotions tearing through my chest. Relief that Sophie had found happiness after the pain I'd caused her. Devastation that her happiness was with someone else. Pride in Jake for being the man I'd failed to be. Jealousy that he got to have what I'd thrown away. But underneath all of it was a growing understanding that what I'd been planning to do was fundamentally selfish. I'd been so focused on what I wanted, on getting Sophie back, on redemption for my past mistakes, that I hadn't considered what was best for her. Sophie was happy. Sophie was loved. Sophie was building the life she'd always dreamed of with someone who put her first, who chose her every day, who was excited about their future together. She was having a baby with a man who adored her, planning to marry someone who had proven his commitment through actions rather than words. What right did I have to disrupt that? What kind of person would I be if I tried to interfere with her happiness just because I'd finally realized what I'd lost? I spent the next 3 days wrestling with the decision of whether to go home for Christmas. Part of me wanted to see Sophie one more time, to witness her happiness firsthand and maybe find some closure in seeing how right she and Jake were together. Part of me knew that watching them together would be torture, that seeing her laugh at his jokes and plan their future would break whatever was left of my heart. But there was another part of me that recognized this as an opportunity for growth, for finally putting Sophie's well-being above my own desires. For proving to myself that I'd actually learned something from the mistakes that had cost me the best relationship of my life. In the end, I decided to go home for Christmas, not to interfere or to try to win Sophie back, but to support Jake and to celebrate their happiness. To be the kind of man who could put family above personal pain, who could smile and offer congratulations even when it hurt. To finally choose love over selfishness, even if that love meant letting go completely. The flight to Austin was turbulent, but not nearly as turbulent as my emotional state as I prepared to spend Christmas watching my cousin announce his engagement to the woman I'd been planning to propose to myself. I'd rehearsed what I would say when Jake introduced us, how I would react to seeing Sophie pregnant with his baby, how I would handle the moment when he got down on one knee on Christmas Eve. I thought I was prepared for anything. I was wrong. When I walked into my aunt's house on Christmas Eve morning, the first thing I saw was Sophie in the kitchen, laughing at something my mother was saying while she helped prepare dinner. She wore a red maternity dress that showed off her growing belly, her hair pulled back in a style that highlighted the glow everyone talks about pregnant women having. She looked radiant. She looked happy. She looked like she belonged in my family's kitchen in a way that made my chest tight with longing and loss. Michael, my mother called out when she saw me. Come meet Sophie. Jake's told us so much about her. Sophie turned around, and for a split second, I saw recognition flash across her features before she controlled her expression. She knew exactly who I was, just as I'd known exactly who she was in that coffee shop in Denver. Sophie, I said, extending my hand with what I hoped was an appropriately cousin-like smile. It's nice to finally meet you. Jake talks about you nonstop. Michael, she replied, shaking my hand briefly, her voice carefully neutral. Jake's mentioned you too, the successful cousin in Seattle. Denver now, actually. I transferred offices recently. Something shifted in her expression at that information, a flicker of understanding that suggested she knew exactly why I might have transferred to her city. But she didn't say anything, just nodded politely and turned back to helping my mother with dinner preparations. The rest of the day passed in a surreal blur of normal family activities conducted under the strangest possible circumstances. I watched Sophie charm my relatives, saw her laugh at my uncle's terrible jokes, observed her gentle way with my young cousins. I watched Jake hover around her, constantly checking if she needed anything, his hand frequently finding her stomach in unconscious protective gestures. They were perfect together. That was the unavoidable truth that became clearer with every interaction I witnessed. Sophie brought out Jake's confidence and ambition, while Jake provided the steady, unwavering support that allowed Sophie to shine. They complemented each other in ways that were obvious to everyone around them. During dinner, I found myself sitting directly across from them, which gave me an unfortunate front row seat to their happiness. They shared inside jokes, finished each other's sentences, and had the kind of easy physical intimacy that spoke of deep comfort and genuine affection. "Sophie, tell Michael about the nursery project you're working on," my aunt suggested. "She's designing everything herself, it's going to be beautiful." "It's nothing too elaborate," Sophie said, her hand moving to her belly. "Just a little nature theme with soft greens and blues. Jake's been building all the furniture from scratch." "You're building furniture?" I asked Jake, genuinely surprised. "Sophie inspired me to try new things," he replied, grinning at her. "Turns out I'm not terrible with my hands when I have the right motivation." "He's being modest," Sophie said, her voice full of pride. "He built the most beautiful crib I've ever seen. Hand-carved details, perfect joinery, it's like a work of art." The love and admiration in her voice when she talked about Jake was unmistakable. This wasn't just happiness or contentment, this was the deep, abiding love of someone who had found their perfect partner. After dinner, as the family gathered in the living room for the traditional Christmas Eve gift exchange, Jake stood up and cleared his throat. "Before we start with presents, I have something I want to say," he announced, his voice slightly nervous but determined. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Jake was about to propose to Sophie in front of our entire family, and I was going to have to watch the woman I loved accept another man's proposal. "Sophie," Jake said, turning to face her as she sat on the couch, her hands protectively covering her stomach. "A year and a half ago, you walked into my life and changed everything. You made me believe in love, in partnership, in the possibility of building something beautiful with another person." Sophie was already crying, her free hand covering her mouth as she realized what was happening. "You've given me the greatest gift imaginable, your love, your trust, and now our baby," Jake continued, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "I can't imagine my life without you in it, and I don't want to try." He got down on one knee in front of her, opening the box to reveal his grandmother's ring, a vintage piece with intricate detailing that was absolutely perfect for Sophie's style. "Sophie Martinez, will you marry me?" "Yes," Sophie whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." The room erupted in cheers and applause as Jake slipped the ring onto Sophie's finger and kissed her while our entire family celebrated around them. I clapped and smiled and said all the right things, playing the role of happy cousin while inside I felt like I was dying. But as I watched Sophie's face, radiant with joy and love, as I saw the way she looked at Jake like he hung the moon, as I witnessed the genuine celebration of two people who had found their perfect match, I realized something important. This wasn't a tragedy. This was exactly how it was supposed to be. Sophie deserved this happiness. She deserved a man who would never make her choose between love and anything else, who would build her furniture and plan romantic proposals and be excited about their future together. She deserved Jake, who had loved her patiently and consistently and without reservation. And I deserved to live with the consequences of my choices, to learn from my mistakes, and to find a way to be happy for the people I cared about even when their happiness came at the cost of my own dreams. Later that evening, as the family celebration wound down and people began heading home, Sophie approached me in the kitchen where I was helping clean up. "Michael," she said quietly, "can we talk for a minute?" We stepped out onto the back porch, away from the noise and celebration inside. The December air was cold, but the silence between us was even more frigid. "I know why you're in Denver," Sophie said without preamble. "I know this isn't a coincidence." "Sophie, please, let me finish," she interrupted. "I know you came looking for me. I know you probably had some plan to apologize and try to win me back. And I need you to understand something." She took a deep breath, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. "What we had was real, Michael. I loved you completely, and when you chose your career over us, it broke my heart in ways I didn't think were possible. I spent months wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough to make you stay." "Sophie, there was nothing wrong with. I'm not finished," she said firmly. "But eventually, I realized that you did me a favor. You showed me exactly what I didn't want in a partner. You taught me the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves you enough to choose you when it matters." She looked through the window at Jake, who was showing off her engagement ring to my cousins. "Jake chooses me every single day. When I was scared to trust again, he was patient. When I told him about you and how much you'd hurt me, he promised to be different and then proved it through his actions. When I got pregnant unexpectedly and panicked about how it would change our relationship, he cried with joy and immediately started talking about baby names. I'm happy for you, I said, and meant it despite the pain in my chest. You deserve all of this. I do, Sophie agreed. And you deserve to find someone who makes you want to be the kind of man Jake is. Someone who inspires you to choose love over everything else, not just when it's convenient. Sophie, I need you to promise me something, she continued. I need you to promise that you'll leave us alone. That you won't try to interfere or complicate things. That you'll let me be happy with Jake without the ghost of our relationship haunting us. I looked at her standing there, pregnant and engaged and more beautiful than I'd ever seen her, asking me to do the one thing that would prove I'd actually learned something from my mistakes. I promise, I said. I won't interfere. I won't complicate things. I'll let you be happy. Thank you, Sophie said, and for the first time since I'd seen her in that coffee shop, she smiled at me with something approaching warmth. And Michael, I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you find someone who makes you want to be better, the way Jake makes me want to be better. She went back inside then, leaving me alone on the porch with the cold air and the weight of finally, truly letting go. 6 months later, I got a text from Jake with a photo of their wedding day. Sophie looked stunning in a simple dress that accommodated her 8 months pregnant belly, and Jake looked like the happiest man alive. The message read, "Wish you could have been here, but thanks for the generous gift." Sophie loved the handmade baby blanket. I'd missed the wedding deliberately, claiming a work conflict that wasn't entirely false. But I'd sent a gift, a baby blanket I'd learned to knit during my own version of therapy, worked in soft yellows and greens with a pattern that had taken me weeks to master. 3 weeks after that, I got another text. Baby Isabella Martinez arrived this morning. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect in every way. We're calling her Izzy. I stared at the photo of their daughter, a tiny, perfect person with Sophie's dark hair and what looked like Jake's nose, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not the sharp pain of loss I'd grown accustomed to, but something softer. Something that felt almost like peace. Isabella Martinez, a new person in the world, created by 2 people who had found their perfect match in each other. A baby who would grow up knowing she was wanted, planned for, celebrated. A little girl who would have Jake's steady reliability and Sophie's creative spirit. Everything I'd lost, and everything I'd never really deserved in the first place. I typed back, "Congratulations. She's beautiful. Give Sophie my best." Then I deleted Sophie's number from my phone, closed that chapter of my life completely, and started the long work of figuring out who I wanted to be now that I'd finally stopped trying to go backward. Some love stories don't end with the couple getting back together. Sometimes they end with the understanding that letting go is the most loving thing you can do. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to be happy with someone else. Sophie had been right. I did deserve to find someone who made me want to be better. Someone who inspired me to choose love first, not as an afterthought or when it was convenient. I just had to stop looking backward long enough to see her when she arrived.